How is it going, everyone? Here once again to talk about your favorite publisher, my mother's favorite video game publisher, and that is, of course, one Ubisoft. Okay, to be serious, don't want to make this another video crapping on Ubisoft. They just give a lot of reason to crap on them from time to time, and hey, I haven't uploaded a video talking about Star Wars Outlaws in like 72 hours, so pat on the back for me on that one, but this is pretty relevant news, if it is in fact true, as it looks like Watch Dogs as a franchise may be gone for now, or particularly dead and buried. Now, let's talk the news, and then I want to give you guys my opinion on it, especially the background on Watch Dogs. I know at this point Watch Dogs has lost a lot of its appeal. A lot of people still enjoy the games for what they are, but I think a lot of people also forget about just how much hype and anticipation this game had back when the original was gonna come out. I should say the franchise as a whole. However, speaking on X, known leaker Jonathan revealed how the series is seemingly done in regards to Watch Dogs. Legion's commercial failure brought the cancellation of multiple projects in the series, according to the leaker, including a fairly original Battle Royale project. I'll talk about that as well. Now, outside of the Battle Royale title, which I'm not too surprised by. Remember, when we heard from Ubisoft about their live service titles, they had a ton cooking in the oven, and if you don't think that they were looking at every single one of their IPs at disposal and in their brain thinking, how do we monetize these games even more? How do we live service them? You are kidding yourself. They absolutely were looking at every single franchise at their disposal and trying to figure out how they could make a live service game out of them. A Battle Royale title for Watch Dogs, though, I don't know how it would have turned out. Probably will never see the light of day, but as a franchise, it does look like Watch Dogs is going to the wayside. Now, I could very well see this being a franchise that at some point, I don't know, over the course of a while, Ubisoft decides to bring it back, and maybe there's a cult following that develops, and in 8 to 10 years from now, people are like, hey, do you guys remember the first Watch Dogs? Wasn't that game actually so underrated? So on and so forth. But Watch Dogs Legion was a game that came out in the fall of 2020 alongside the launch of the next generation consoles, at the time next generation consoles, the PS5 and Xbox Series, and it seemingly did not do all too well commercially. It didn't review all too well, and really, Watch Dogs as an IP is so interesting because if you really assess it from the forefront, I think what a lot of people were expecting was for Watch Dogs to become another pillar franchise for Ubisoft. And I remember when the game was initially revealed, I want to say it was back in 2012, 2013, I believe, was when it was really getting its big gameplay rollouts. Maybe it started in 2012. It was around that range. Game came out in early 2014. When we were initially seeing gameplay, people were initially hearing about it. Let it not be twisted. Even though Watch Dogs at this point, a lot of people and a lot of you guys have no care for it. If you go back a decade, 12 years ago, the build up to the very first Watch Dogs was enormous. This game had so much hype, the amount of social media traction that it was pulling at the time, especially when, like, you know, the online video, that wasn't as big as it is now. Still fairly big back in 2012, 2013, but obviously it's a whole different ballgame. But I remember Watch Dogs was pulling crazy numbers, and there was an incredible amount of interest in Watch Dogs, an open world hacking style game from Ubisoft, and at that point, Ubisoft didn't kill all of their goodwill. You have to go back to 2012, 2013 if you guys don't remember, and I'm just telling you guys and letting you know how it is. Go back to then. What was coming out around that time? The Assassin's Creed games were booming in 2013. 2013 had the release of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Yeah, Assassin's Creed 3 wasn't amazing, but prior to that, you had the Ezio trilogy literally coming out. Ubisoft had established Assassin's Creed as one of the pillar open world franchises in all of gaming. Now that same publisher was gonna do an open world hacking game, a game attached with it a big budget, a gigantic budget, and it looked fascinating from the gameplay. The trailers had a darker ambiance and an aesthetic to it, looked incredible, and then the first Watch Dogs came out, and I just think a lot of people were disappointed by that game. But not to say it was an awful game, it's just I think people had incredibly high expectations for the game, and ultimately, it did not deliver. Still a fine and perfectly acceptable open world title, and narratively, I thought it was a fairly interesting game, and it had a lot of unique gameplay elements that you would hope that they could build off of and create something compelling with a sequel. And you want to know another franchise that was incredibly highly anticipated, and the first game didn't deliver, and they swung around perception of said franchise with the sequel? Oh, one Assassin's Creed. Yeah, go back to 2007, the lead up to Assassin's Creed 1. That game had an enormous amount of hype and anticipation, and AC1 was another game, and it wasn't received as well as a lot of people expected it to be. But then Assassin's Creed 2 came out, changed a couple things, had an incredibly compelling main character, and suddenly the entire perception of the franchise changed, where at that point we were getting yearly Assassin's Creed games for like damn near a decade, 7 years, something like that, a long time of getting yearly Assassin's Creed games just because AC2 flipped the franchise that strongly. Watch Dogs, on the other hand, 2 years after the release of Watch Dogs 1, which by the way, same exact turnaround time between AC1 and AC2, I think Watch Dogs 2 was looked at as the game to, you know, change perception of Watch Dogs a little bit, improve the game in a lot of areas, and I think Watch Dogs 2 did improve Watch Dogs 1 in a lot of areas, but for whatever reason, it didn't resonate at the level that Assassin's Creed 2 did. This could be for a wide variety of reasons. First of all, well, I think Watch Dogs 2 in a lot of areas is a better game. Assassin's Creed 2 and Watch Dogs 2, we're comparing wildly different games. There's not an Ezio that is at the helm of the Watch Dogs franchise, like Ezio was at the helm of Assassin's Creed for 3 consecutive games. You didn't have that with Watch Dogs, and I think 2009 for the market for open world games, a little bit of a different environment than, let's say, 2016, when you've had so many big open world games, and at that point, 2016 was really when open world games started to explode. I would say probably a year of open world games, a lot of open world games coming out, a year or two. And you were just getting open world game after open world game. And I think by 2016, you gotta look at Ubisoft as a publisher. They burned a lot of their goodwill. At that point, their goodwill was starting to be burned. Not to the level that it is now, but Assassin's Creed kind of fell off after Assassin's Creed Unity and all of its technical issues. Syndicate didn't do all too well commercially, and I don't know if that impacted Watch Dogs at all, but it's something to consider. Assassin's Creed ultimately was revitalized with Assassin's Creed Origins and whatnot, even though, you know, I talk about those games ad nauseum in my opinions and thoughts on them, but they are incredibly successful games, and I won't take that away from it. But Watch Dogs never found that footing, but I'm telling you guys, if you weren't around online 2012, 2013, when Watch Dogs, that momentum really started to build and started to get rolling for this game, and it started to become one of the more anticipated games in all of gaming leading into its spring of 2014 release, you might be thinking, why am I making such a big deal out of Watch Dogs? Was it really that big of a game? I'm telling you guys, the build-up to the game was enormous, and people were incredibly excited, but it's the same thing that happened with Assassin's Creed 1, but Assassin's Creed ultimately made a great turnaround, and now, people do look back at Assassin's Creed 1 incredibly fondly. I don't know if that's gonna happen with Watch Dogs 1. I don't think it is, especially because Watch Dogs isn't this IP that there is so much discussion around it. Like, Assassin's Creed still has a high level of discussion around it, even with the newer games. Watch Dogs doesn't really have that. In Assassin's Creed, it's always a debate about the old games versus the new games. Watch Dogs is never going to have that, and I don't know if people are going to look at Watch Dogs 1 and be like, man, Watch Dogs 1 was such a great game. And Assassin's Creed 1, a lot of people do look at that game as a great game. I think it's a fine game. I'm just not crazy about AC1, but a lot of people are, and hey, more power to you if you are. Watch Dogs 1, I don't think will be seen in that light. But we'll see if this ultimately is true, and if the franchise is dead and buried. I don't think there's a lot of life left in the IP, and after the flop that was Legion, like, why continue with Watch Dogs? It's not like Watch Dogs is a franchise that had a peak and then fell off. There was really never no peak with Watch Dogs outside of pre-Watch Dogs 1, where the hype leading into Watch Dogs 1 was enormous. But as far as an actual game release, what was Watch Dogs' peak? I don't think there really was one at a high level like there was with, let's say, you know, when Assassin's Creed Syndicate came out, and that game commercially didn't crush it. You can look back at the history of Assassin's Creed and realize, hey, there was AC2, the entire trilogy, AC4, AC3. Those games sold exceedingly well. Just because we had one game not do all too well doesn't mean we have to completely throw away the franchise. Then that's when you circle back and you just revamp it a little bit, and ultimately Ubisoft found success with the new style of Assassin's Creed, but Watch Dogs never really had that peak outside of, again, pre-Watch Dogs 1. And how can you revitalize the hype that there was for a game before said franchise even was out? You really can't. The toothpaste is out of the tube at this point, and Watch Dogs has been established as what it's established as. And even with Assassin's Creed 1, I think a lot of people saw that game as something to build off of and ultimately be successful, and it was. I don't think Watch Dogs at this point in time is that, and why continue to drum up the IP and try to do more with the IP. I just think it's best to leave this one behind and move on. That's my humble opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think it's time for Ubisoft to move on from Watch Dogs, or do you think Watch Dogs still has some life to it? Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.